Good morning. It's a beautiful Monday morning here in the northwest of Ireland, and I was walking out by the beach. That's why I look a bit of a mess. If you haven't seen my Lovecraft documentary, Liber Providence, it's on Beyond Room 313 channel. I will leave the link below here. Now, I was reading on this morning about the whole Extinction Rebellion stuff that's kicked off in around the world. It's really kicked off big time in Australia, and it's going on everywhere now this week, and all the whole thing behind it, that we've only, the usual story, we've only got so many months to live. If we don't do something now, it's the end of the world. And anyone who has any intelligence can see that the majority of the protesters, in fact all of them, come from a certain demographic within the socioeconomic world, upper middle class people mostly. Now, what we're really talking about here is a generation of wealthy people and aristocrats and well-to-do types. And also, this is why many socialists are involved in this. Big green. Big green is a big push for industry. Now, I'll talk about why they want this. But the wealthy and the upper middle class were very badly affected by the 2008 global economic downturn. Now, a big sizable proportion of that was to do with lending institutions and things like money that was sent out for investment in property, this kind of thing. When these things had happened in the past, they were able to get their portfolio managers and ship the money over into other emerging or exciting industries. What happened was, in 2008, there was literally nothing to put it in. And the reason for this was the one thing that they had wanted to put the money into was the biotech industry. Now, you all remember the whole thing with the genome? Remember that? They were going to, all these biotech startups got massive amounts of money to basically decode the genome. This was the whole thing. The genome was to be decoded. Every disease was to be solved. Every psychological problem and mental issue was to be solved. And it was very eugenics orientated, looking back on it now, how they were thinking and behaving. And this was to be the big gold mine of investment portfolio and strategies going forward. The genome thing was a complete catastrophe. They never talk about this because what they discovered was that we're not in our genes, and there was incredible complexity involved in this. That to say, like, okay, let's isolate the gene that makes somebody have multiple sclerosis, we can remove the gene or alter the gene somehow. It's not that simple. This was just a complete a sci-fi. So it was like the 1960s, 50s, where we're going to be living on cities on the moon without people actually believing it, without even considering the logistics behind it. Well, it was like that. It was this unbelievable fate in science, because you'd had people like Dawkins and the rest of them who had built up science into a religion, that science can do anything. And the Genome Project proved it didn't. And I put a thing out there. Well, I'm going. That's for a different video. Are the genes a product of consciousness, or a consciousness a product of the genes? And this was a huge issue. So all these biotech companies had all effectively collapsed by the time the 2008 financial catastrophe happened. And that's why it particularly hit the upper middle classes, who generally, if they don't have their money invested in pension funds or in funds that deal with emerging technologies and industries, they have them in things like property, and the rental market collapsed. Both the commercial and the private rental markets collapsed, particularly in the English-speaking world. That's what really happened here in Ireland. There was nothing to move the money into because the biotech thing had failed. Now, suppose you're a wealthy person and you know that there's going to be a collapse in the future at some point. There always is, because this is how the secular economy works. People think, oh, we have to avoid an economic collapse. They're deliberately let happen, because what they do is they allow things like land grabs and property grabs and company grabs and business grabs for the super rich to grab up on the cheap. So this whole thing of, like, they tell us we must avoid a downturn. The downturns are part of the process of this corporatist, neoliberal economic model. Now, this brings us to Extinction Rebellion. They had to create, in the wake of the failure of the biotech industry in terms of the specific things with the genome project, they had to create an artificial industry that they could put their money in, that could be propped up by public funding, such as direct government and investment or direct uh, tax or public money, grants, and so on, major tax breaks, injections of public monies, things that could be quickly get around statutory laws and things regarding this. So they invented this thing called big. They don't call it big green, but that's what it is. It's just like to replace big oil, because oil is basically becoming too expensive to produce anyway. Now, so the idea was, let's create an emergency. Right, the emergency is that the Earth is being destroyed by greenhouse gases, particularly CO2. It's heating up rapidly because of man's burning fossil fuels. So we must shift our technology towards greener technologies. And any sane person would say, even if there's no emergency with climate, you say, "Oh, that's a good idea," because I tell you, things like it's been shown now that diesel fumes in cities have been a terrible environmental thing and are killing tens of, maybe hundreds of thousands of people all over the world from diesel cars and diesel fumes. And and the average, and then the diesel engines, car engines are noisy. You hear electric engines are much quieter. And then people would say, well, it's a great idea. And most sane people would say, yeah, we shift to it. Now, what would be the sane approach to doing this? How about every homeowner gets a grant to put a small wind turbine on their roof that charges a long-term NiCad cell battery pack in their basement to supplement the power coming from the utility grid? Did it happen? No. What do we get? Wind turbines the size of skyscrapers, built in often areas where there's natural scenic beauty or in the sea, away from the cities, because if people in large population areas saw how destructive and horrific these things are for the environment, they would want other forms of, they'd want coal and fire and gas burning plants back. They're literally that bad. They need 15 tons of oil lubricant a year. They need a diesel supply to start them up, to get them going, even when the wind is blowing. Why are they gigantic? Why are they enormous? There's one simple reason for it. I can't own it. You can't own it. But who can own it? Corporations. Corporations who then can charge you a utility on top of that. So therefore, it's basically, if you're part of Big Green, between lobbying governments to creating a public persona that the world is about to end, the only thing we can do is build wind turbines everywhere. You get government grants, government tax relief, government land has even been given away. Vast stretches of public land have been given away to these things, and so you basically have your Big Green gets the taxpayer to pay for their infrastructure. Then they put a meter on it, and then they charge you back to you and me, their green energy. It is a gigantic scam of monumental proportions. Now, there's a psychosocial aspect to this. Who are all the people you see at these climate and extinction rebellion protests? They're all establishment types. They all have names like Maxwell Chorley Pym, the Viscount of Cambridge. I'm a socialist. I'm here because I've only got 10 months left. And you hear them all, they all talk like this, the Socialist Works Party, people before profit, and these left-wing parties, and all have these voices, because that's their retirement and their wealth guaranteed. Because Papa has transferred all the money into green energy projects, and I have to make sure that I'm still a multimillionaire when I'm 50 and don't have to work, so I can go around the world, fighting climate change. And that's what you're dealing with. It's a class system war again. It's a class system war, and then you also have like people who represent traditional socialism involved in this. Why is that? Because all the pensions of these unions, these public sector unions that work in railways or in the civil service, they're all moving their pension fund management into Big Green. So they have a vested interest. You work for the government. you have a vested interest in going down and protesting with Extinction Rebellion, because that's your big fat pension there that the taxpayers can't fund anymore. But it can be funded if you can guilt society into paying for your infrastructure. It's the oldest trick in the book. Problem, reaction, solution, as David Icke calls it, the Hegelian dialect of where he got that from. And it's the oldest, create a problem and create a solution for it. Create a sense of religiosity around it. You see, when the oil thing was taken off, they played very heavily on human sexuality. There was always the young guy, get the sports car, get the girl. That was a big part of. You can't really do that with green stuff. You can't really do that. So what you have to do is create an emotionality based on saving the children. And that's why they wheel out Greta Thunberg. There's no difference between Greta Thunberg and Colonel Sanders selling Kentucky Fried Chicken, Greta Thunberg and the Michelin Man selling tires. There's no difference. It's the same. She's a corporate logo, an icon for big green. Now, this is not to say environmental issues are all bullshit. In fact, environmental issues are very important. I was actually a member of the Ecology Party here before I saw it being taken over by communists and turned into green politics. They took, and you saw my documentary on the Green Party. The Red Army faction was hugely involved in the foundation of it. Now, so this Extinction Rebellion thing, these are people that don't have regular jobs because they're all on trust funds, or they're all in college, in university, and that's all being paid for by papa and mama. If you're a normal working person and you're walking past Extinction Rebellion, you just look down and you look at. There's a song by the Jam called "The Eaton Rifles," and what it talks about is that when working, I think Paul Weller or some of his friends were walking past Eton, the very exclusive posh boys' school in England, that they were all being mocked and laughed at by these fellas with straw hats and holding up champagne. That happened in Dublin actually in the 1940s. At Trinity College, all these fellas with straw hats and salad days and champagne glasses used to scream, "Dirty, filthy Irish Dubliners, Catholic papist filth," because you couldn't out of the window with the champagne glasses. Ironically, Trinity College is one of the biggest promoters of climate change today. Same people in that institution today, and that's what goes on. It's all big green is about the big class war that we've been dealing with for centuries, and don't be under any assumption that this is a battle for saving the planet. This is a battle for saving the establishment and nothing else.